So a while ago, just because I was curious, I looked up on a gay rights website what the LGBTQ rights were in Israel as opposed to Palestine. Now, this information was not initially presented next to each other. The website in question was not a website specifically devoted to anything in regards to Israel or Palestine or what's going on right now. It's just a gay rights website in general. And as you can see, I put them next to each other to compare what LGBT rights are like in Israel as compared to Palestine. And as you can see, gay people have it a lot better in Israel than they do in Palestine. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is it's another classic example of what I call strange bedfellows of the left, because they are really, just extremely pro Palestine, going so far as to make absurd, like, well, not just absurd, just straight up evil, statements of support for the violence that just took place, wherein Hamas targeted innocent people. And in a way that was just brutal, and there's really at no point I don't, and I'm going to get into that some other time. I don't cover a lot of this kind of stuff because inevitably there's going to be enormous lies being told on both sides. Everybody who talks about an atrocity has an angle. It's like, well, this is Israeli propaganda or this is Hamas propaganda. But this part right here, this is not propaganda. This is something that you can verify. And it always struck me as odd that the same kind of people who wanted Andrew Yang canceled when he ran for mayor in New York because he dared to suggest that Israel should at least be allowed to defend themselves, who would also at the same time want anyone who was not 100% on board with the LGBT, activist agenda to also be canceled. Like, you can't have these things at the same time. And as you can see from looking at this chart that I put together, the rights of the two different, in the two different places are drastically different. And that's before we even get into how they treat them. I mean, aside from official policies, it just has to do with the communities themselves. Gay Palestinian, murdered in the West Bank. I'll provide a link to this in the description, but Palestinian police have arrested a suspect in the killing of a 25-year-old man after his body was found decapitated in an occupied West Bank. LGBT groups in Israel, where Ahmed Marie was seeking asylum, says he had received threats because he was gay. So, in other words, a Palestinian guy was seeking asylum in Israel because he was gay, and they murdered him. And then there was this article, what it's like to be gay in Gaza, meeting Israelis on dating apps, evading Hamas, and plotting escapes. And I'll provide this one as well, but it just kind of describes, it's like it says here, in a society where homosexuality could be punishable by death, gay Gazans keep their identity secret. And that's the kind of community that Gaza is, and Palestine in general is. And it's not just them, it's pretty much most of the Arab world, which is why I knew at some point there was going to be some kind of situation where the woke community was going to be confused as to what to do next. And there was a little bit of that not long ago, if you remember. Basically, exactly as I predicted, once Muslim parents got into the conversation about the LGBTQ books that were being shown to kids, including things like genderqueer, was going to cause problems for the left because what are you going to do? Are you going to be Islamophobic? Are you going to criticize them for their bigoted beliefs? Well, that's Islam. And it's not, I want to be clear, not all Muslims are extremists, just so we get that out of the way. I have friends who are Muslims who don't go along with all this stuff. But that doesn't change the fact that, this was never going to be an allegiance made, that was going to do well because they patently oppose the idea that you should be allowed to brainwash their kids into certain ideologies, and this was inevitably going to be a problem, and it recently, for example, I think it's Dearborn, was the city in question where they elected a Muslim majority to the city council, so they canceled the Pride Parade, and then they ordered all the Pride flags taken down. Again, strange bedfellows of the left. This was never going to last. And the defense that I usually get is, well, yeah, okay, we oppose how they treat LGBTQ people, but that doesn't mean that, we believe that they should be slaughtered by Israel. like that we don't advocate violence against them. The problem is that Antifa and groups like them and the far left in general are all about violence, when it comes to not going along with the LGBTQ agenda. I mean, if you guys remember this video that I made shortly after the trans shooter went to a Christian school and shot children, here's an example of that exact advocation for violence if you don't go along with the trans LGBTQ activist agenda.
If you back a wild animal into a corner, they're going to become a dangerous animal. So if you want to die on that hill of yours of righteousness and moral majority, then you go right ahead. I dare you to try and stop me from going into a women's bathroom. It will be the last mistake you ever make.
So if you do not allow this trans woman to go to the bathroom of biological women, they will kill you. That's what that means. It will be the last mistake you ever make. Let's continue.
I dare you to try and stop a transgender woman in my presence from using the bathroom. It will be the last mistake you ever make.
If we are in their presence, this person's presence, and we do not allow another trans woman to use the biological women's bathroom, then they're going to kill us.
This is a call to action and a call to arms to everybody within the United States that are scared, worried, have children that are transgender, lesbian, bi, or gay. This is a call to action. You need to arm up. Plain and simple. Go out, buy a gun. Learn how to use it efficiently, through and through. Because the time to act is now.
And the action apparently will be that if they try to deny you access to the women's bathroom as a trans woman, then you should kill them. If you see them doing this for someone else, you should kill them.
You need to protect yourself, and you need to protect your fellow transgender brothers and sisters and theys and thems. You need to protect the rest of us in the LGBT community, as I'm going to do myself. Because there are lots of people like me who are not afraid to die. I love my girlfriends to death, but I would rather die for them to secure their safety, freedom, and future than to live and not have anything done.
So how can the same community that is all about violence in the name of the LGBTQ movement be equally pro-Palestine? If you're willing to shoot people for not allowing you to use the bathroom that you want to use based upon your gender identity, and you're willing to die, yet at the same time, you are ardently in support of a community that is extremely anti-LGBTQ. If there was ever any argument that I might have for why, because I still kind of lean in the two-state solution. Obviously, the Palestinians need to have somewhere to live. But if there was any argument as to why we can't allow that to happen, is that we don't need another community where this is what's going on, right? And don't even get me started on Antifa's position. You know what? Let's get started. Let's talk about Antifa's position in all this. Tim Pool just did a bit exposing how Black Lives Matter, for example, is posting support for Palestine in their approach to this situation. As you can see, a Palestinian flag coming out of a paraglider. I stand with Palestine. These paragliders basically dropped into a music festival and slaughtered a few hundred people. And they captured young women, brutally gang raped them, and then paraded their bodies through the streets of Gaza. I haven't done a lot of coverage on that. However, a friend of the show, Neo Unrealist, has. And I will link you to his channel on Rumble. If you're somebody who follows him or did follow him on YouTube, he was actually removed from YouTube and is now only on Rumble. But anyway, so blatant, obvious support for this. This is indicating that you support the action of taking and flying a paraglider into a music festival and killing random civilians. Again, if you're really worried about the situation, it's just like with the Irish Republican Army. I support a unified Ireland. I believe that the United Kingdom, meaning Britain, should give the land back to the people of Ireland. It doesn't change the fact that I'm also not on board with the IRA planting car bombs and killing random people. If you're really about that, if that's what you're really about, then you should attack, military targets. And if you're just lobbing rockets into random civilian centers, you're not really going to achieve anything. It's not just a matter of it being immoral. It isn't going to work. Nobody's going to come around to thinking that they should value your point of view when you just kill random civilians. But anyway, Black Lives Matter supporting this, and like Ruin Leon actually did a video that I'll link as well, where he brought up a black TikToker who said, "Yeah, that was awesome. We need to start decolonizing the United States," and just calling for black people to start attacking, um, you know, random white people in the streets so that they could do the same thing that Hamas is doing. So let's look at the Antifa angle for a moment. So predictably, many, Antifa accounts on Twitter have come forward in support of the violence, met out by Hamas against Israel and being pro-Palestine, et cetera, et cetera. But let's bring that back around because, again, these people had no problem committing violence against anyone who is anti-LGBTQ. And I don't think they realize just how ridiculous they look. Exactly how can you have a group like Queers for Palestine? Like, this is a thing. These people are coming forward in support of Palestine, showing up and committing violence, and again, as was pointed out in this tweet, like, are they going to head over there to show solidarity? Have they went over to show solidarity yet? I want to see how this plays out. Is Antifa deploying to Israel and Palestine to stop the Israeli fascists? I hope they are, Lamau, because it's not going to go well for them. Again, they're going to end up like these individuals, dead as fried chicken. This is what would happen to them if they went over there. They would be executed. By the same people that they're currently, supporting in, violent acts in Israel right now. In essentially just flagrantly attacking people. And of course, if you guys might remember the video I did about woke rape culture, but these people are literally filming themselves gang raping women and then parading their bodies through the streets. And of course, none of that is going to be brought up because rape is only really important if it's politically expedient. So remember how they rationalize this to themselves. They say, well, I don't like their anti-LGBTQ stances in Palestine, but that doesn't mean I don't respect their right to live or exist or whatever. But you remember the WeSpa, as Mary Todd, extensively covered. At the WeSpa, Antifa had no problem violently and brutally attacking people for their anti-LGBTQ stances. Like this guy, street preacher, hadn't done anything to anyone at that point. And they hit him over the head with a skateboard, brutally attacked him. He was bleeding by the end of it. It just doesn't make any sense. Because again, if somebody's anti-LGBTQ and not following along with it, they're totally willing to savagely attack you. But apparently, the stance of Palestine on this issue is totally irrelevant, and that the people who are extremely anti-LGBTQ in Palestine are totally irrelevant and totally justified in gang raping and slaughtering people in Israel. Strange bedfellows of the left. Like, there's just no self-awareness of what they're doing. They just have no idea how ridiculous they look in this situation. And it does nothing but destroy any credibility that the left had. They just attack innocent people who don't agree with them all the time, but at the same time are in total support of Palestinians, attacking innocent civilians. And again, why is that bad? Because the Palestinian position on the LGBTQ issue is far more extreme than anybody who showed up to protest at the WeSpa. If you want what I feel is probably going to be the best coverage you're going to find on just how bad the atrocities being committed over there are, I would go to friend of the show, Neo Unrealist Rumble channel, which I will add, in the description of this video, because he was removed from YouTube. But in some cases, maybe it's better because he wouldn't even be able to cover this the way that he is if he was trying to do it on YouTube, which is also part of the reason I haven't shown anything graphic yet. But suffice it to say, there's plenty of evidence because Hamas literally just arrogantly, went around live streaming themselves, committing mass, murder and rape, and it's completely out of control. But Again, to wrap it all the way back around to what I started with here, the very people who are singing the praises of Palestine right now for engaging in war against civilians, and I'm not saying no civilians have ever been killed by Israel, that's not the point, would not be welcome there. You know, if you showed up there and tried to use the wrong bathroom, like that clown that I showed earlier, you wouldn't have to worry about it. They'd cut your head off. You'd be dead. If you, as LGBTQ violent activists, showed up and tried to do what you do here, like at the Wee Spa, and places like it, you'd be dead as fried chicken. They'd be cutting your heads off. They'd be throwing you off the top of buildings. And I also agree that civilians should never be targeted and that innocent people should be protected at all costs. I completely agree with that, whether they're Israeli or Palestinian. What I'm trying to draw attention to here is this insane ability of the current alt left to completely not be aware of how hypocritical they're being. It's Me Too unless it's Tara Reid or, unless it's accusations against anyone that the left currently values, then, or if you're walking around, say, with pictures of Joseph Rosenbaum, the child rapist that Kyle Rittenhouse killed, and literally unironically carrying signs with that guy over your head. That's real, by the way. I did a video on it. And that's the woke rape culture video I mentioned earlier. Rape is extremely important to you until it's not, right? The gangster rap culture, for example, and how an absurdly misogynist it is. I mean, that has got to be the most misogynistic version of music there is on the planet. Feminists are strangely quiet about it. Why? Because they don't want to threaten their allegiance with black people and black activists specifically. These kinds of relationships are going to continue to break down. But it more has to do with, to me, it's like, what headspace do you have to be in to be able to hold these two things at the same time? To be, well, you better not say anything bad about Muslims or you're Islamophobic, and you better not say anything bad about trans people or gay people or you're homophobic or transphobic. But somehow Muslims are on the same team as the people that are concerned about being transphobic or homophobic. And as I've already shown, extremist Muslims in Palestine specifically will just straight up murder you if they believe you happen to be a member of this community. It makes no sense to me. And when they wanted to cancel Andrew Yang for suggesting that Israel has a right to defend themselves, just doing that, I mean, and they at that point went out of their way to sabotage the campaign of somebody who genuinely does care and wants to try to help people who are poor. Like that's like the whole focus of what he does. But, he had some wrong think on the topic of Israel, you know. So just different things like this that are going on the left that contradict one another, that inevitably will lead to the left hurting on itself. It's getting harder and harder for me not to just put on the tinfoil hat and believe that somebody is social engineering this specifically to divide and destroy what legitimate leftist activism there was left. Thanks for tuning in.